Hello and welcome to this short presentation. Today's topic is Mimikatz. You might have heard about this. It's a popular tool that is known to attackers, and it's used to decrypt passwords on Microsoft Windows. It was originally created by an ethical hacker from France by the name of Benjamin Delpy. He at the time was interested to understand how Microsoft was performing authentication, and he was studying it. And in the course of his study, he came across a vulnerability that he described. He offers Mimikatz as an open source tool, and this is available to anybody on GitHub, which means getting the source code and then modifying it is a straightforward affair. And lots of people have actually done that. He keeps this tool actually pretty up to date with the latest versions of Windows. The tool exploits, as I said, a design flaw in the Microsoft authentication protocol and is used by pen testers legitimately and by security staff in order to identify if your network is in fact vulnerable. Bad actors, NotPetya, Bad Rabbit, and some many different advanced persistent threat groups have taken it and incorporated into their package. In fact, Delpy reported that he was at a conference in Russia. When he came back from his talk to his room, he found that there was somebody in his room at his laptop. And when he questioned them, they said, oops, sorry, wrong room, and left. He also said that he was accosted in the conference by somebody who demanded that he provide them with the details of his exploit, and he actually did so on USB. Subsequent to that, he, of course, made this available as a open source package. Delpy is an ethical hacker. He had informed Microsoft about what he had found. What is it that it does? Well, Windows W Digest is a feature that was introduced by Microsoft in Windows 7 and 2008 server for single sign-on. The problem is that you got multiple users logging in, and you would prefer them not to have to re-authenticate every time. And so Windows keeps a copy of the encrypted password that you used the last time in credential caching, and then also keeps the key that it uses to decrypt. And so if you happen to already have admin privs on the machine, then because the W Digest contains the encrypted passwords and the decryption key, it's possible, of course, to dump these to memory and then decrypt the encrypted password. Microsoft correctly pointed out that in order to actually do this, you must have already compromised the admin privileges of the account. If that is true, then you already have the keys to the kingdom. What are you doing special with Mimikatz? And so they kind of ignored it. By the way, Mimikatz, Benjamin Delpy is French. Mimi is French for cute. And cats, of course, is the hacker spelling for cats. And so cute cats, if you don't like it because it's open source, it's not difficult to make it Mimi dogs, Mimi raccoons, or Mimi dolphins, or whatever you find cute. And so defenses that specifically look for that word or combinations of that word, Mimikatz, are easily overcome by attackers. As I said, Delpy did contact Microsoft, but it didn't make a whole lot of sense to them. Microsoft eventually decided that they will allow this W Digest feature to be disabled in version 8.1, also in Server 2012 R2. And by default in Windows 10, it is disabled. In 8.1, you can disable it, but by default, it is enabled. By Windows 10, it is disabled by default. However, the feature still exists, W Digest. And so if you get in on a Windows 10 machine and you happen to have admin privileges, why then you can enable W Digest and then carry out the attacks that it enables. And therefore, this has become a popular post-exploitation tool. You're already compromised, your admin password has already been hacked. Okay, now the attacker can maybe come in, enable W Digest, and then use Mimikatz in order to exploit it further. What are its capabilities? Mimikatz can do a number of things. For example, pass the hash. Attackers can reuse the password without cracking the hash, pass the ticket. Mimikatz was used to break the Kerberos ticket used for a user account and then use it to log in on another machine as that user. So if you cracked machine A, you can now log into machine B. Presumably A and B are at least networked internally. You can crack the golden ticket, the Kerb TGT, the ticket granting ticket, encrypts all authentication tickets, which means if you did this, not only can you be local admin, but you can also be domain admin. and now you've got free run of the whole house. You can crack the silver ticket and allow someone to impersonate a user on the network. Pass the key is also possible with Mimikatz, again for impersonation. So how did you catch Mimikatz in real life? Well, our service has a customer who's an MSP who in turn serves a customer in the service industry. The MSP's job is infrastructure monitoring, and the security monitoring aspect of it is done by using the NetSurian managed OpenXDR service. Of course, they had carefully implemented antivirus and kept it up to date. But then what the infection was that somebody had already compromised the admin privileges for an external facing RDP server, remote desktop protocol server. And they got in as that local admin user, and then they deployed a number of tools, including Mimikatz. And that's how we actually caught this attack. Of course, we escalated with details for disinfection and enabled the MSP to prevent further damage. So the attacker already had admin privileges for a internet-facing RDP server. They had compromised that through a pastebin. They had found it, and there was password reuse going on. So they knew the admin password for a public-facing RDP server. Well, you can guess what happens next, right? They got in as a local admin. They installed their malware, and then they did a bunch of downloads, including uninstalling the antivirus, and most importantly, downloaded Mimikatz. And then they did a bunch of things to disable the firewall and then use Mimikatz in order to get access to the rest of the network. And then they began to move laterally using PSExec. They also tried to disable admin, the Microsoft restore point, and they also tried to clear up their tracks. But all of this information was available at the OpenXDR console, and the SOC analyst was able to catch it. So how do you protect against Mimikatz? Well, if you're still running Windows 8 or lower or 2008 or lower, you could install the patch and then use it to disable wdigest. It'll give you some modicum of protection. Of course, if the attacker already has admin privileges, then they can re-enable wdigest, but it's something. You could enable LSA protection on Windows 8, 2008. These are not enabled by default, and by doing that, you will disable some of Mimikatz functionality by default. Mimikatz uses the debug privilege, which is accorded to the local admin, to communicate with LSAS. You could disable this debug privilege. There's no reason the local admin to have this by default. You could also think about disabling credential caching. The downside of this is it becomes inconvenient and you have to provide your credentials every time. But convenience is the enemy of security. You can find this under interactive logon in the Windows settings. Still using legacy antivirus? Well, how about upgrading that to something modern? The NetSurian OpenXDR service offers a deep learning-based EDR, which is able to detect programs like Mimikatz when they run instead of legacy antivirus that might in fact struggle with it. You should assume breach. Perfect protection is not practical. Do all of these things, but then to sit isolated thinking that you're now completely safe isn't meaningful, isn't correct in 2022. You should assume that you will get breached. In which case, what are you doing for detection? Managed XDR service like the one NetSurian provides is excellent. We were able to detect Mimikatz, even though the protection that was in place at the time wasn't able to catch it. So that's Mimikatz. Hope this was fun for you.